Hello, welcome to our studio at BIM Manchester. Just wanted to do a quick bit of a studio tour for you, and a bit of a guide around kind of how to operate the room and just how to use the facilities that are in here. So everything you see in the room lives here. Amps live here. The amps do kind of chop and change from day to day. I guess it kind of depends what the session was before you came in. So if you are planning on using the amps, I'd say just make sure you've kind of double checked what's in the room beforehand. Sometimes the orange likes to float about to different rooms. You can always get it back in here because it does live here. It might just take a bit of hunting down. Because we have the best amps, people tend to want to use them in different spaces, and sometimes they get put in the booth and whatever. It's a living space, so yep, all the amps live here. If you guys are wanting to record in this room from that room, then you can use the, just pop that down there, use the studio ties. So input 1 here goes to input 1 of your desk, input 2 of your desk. No prize for guessing where input 3 goes. It's 9. No, it isn't, it's 3. That wasn't funny. So weirdly, that's you might take that for granted, but there are so many studios that just aren't wired up properly. There's a place I did a session in Scotland where like 1 was 13, 2 was 7, 3 was like 9, and there was no maths or rhyme or reason to it. So we've made sure that that's right. You also have all your headphone ports are there, and all your guitar ins and outs are there, so you could have a guitarist in that room playing through an amp in this room, or an amp in that room and guitarist in this room, however you want to run it. It's a really functional facility. I'm going to pop this back where it belongs because it's making me feel a bit ill. Drum kit again lives in this room. We have the nice drum kit that gets fresh skins every few weeks to make sure that it's always kind of ready to go for you. Cables live on the wall, so for those of you that may not have coiled a cable before, such as whoever put these on here, I'm going to do a bit of a basic guide. Apologies for anyone that's been doing this stuff for years and this might be a bit of a taken for granted thing, but I just want to make sure our cables stay usable. So if you're coiling a cable, end of the cable in your hand, form a loop and just match that loop every time you go round. If the cable starts fighting you and not wanting to go that way, then you go back to the root and twist it round in the direction you want to go in. Then you have a nice easy coil. Pop it back on there, our cables stay usable, and we don't have to replace them every year, and you're not doing that thing where you have to chase down which XLR is broken in my 20 mic setup. Before I move on, if I see anyone doing this, I will make sure you're withdrawn. So can we just make sure we coil cables like a normal human and do it that way. Oh, look at that, just as I'm doing an example. Mic stands. This is another one. Want to make sure we're looking after our mic stands, because there's nothing worse than being halfway through a session and seeing one of your overhead mics do this, because then your whole recording's ruined. So where you are adjusting mic stands, just make sure that you are loosening whatever part you want to adjust and then tightening it back up as and when you want to fix it in place. So if I'm adjusting anything, make sure you loosen it first, then tighten it up. Don't force things into the direction you want. Essentially, that's going to break it long term. So, like sections such as this kind of pivot joint here, that's 2 small rubber rings. So, rubber, after a while, if it has a lot of friction on it, will wear out. And that's why you get droopy stands. So, just make sure you're loosening stuff off before you adjust it. Bit of general practice, try and always have an arm over a leg. So if I'm having to really extend this stand out to reach an awkward spot, if that arm is over a leg, it's less likely to fall over. If it is over a gap, it goes over straight away. That can be through the weight of the microphone or just you walking past and knocking it accidentally, so just make sure your arm over a leg. Try not to use the stands from an enormous distance away, so if you position the stand for the drum kit, rather than doing this kind of thing and extending it a ridiculous distance, just run the stand as short as you can and you've got a lot more stability there and it's less stuff in the way while you're trying to work. All our stands should be arranged the same way when you leave the room, so just pop it back there. There are also pictures on the wall for how we like things set up in case you forget that that's how we like them. There's a piano in the room as well. If you want to use that piano, then make sure you use that first and tune everyone else to it, and try not to record anything that's in B. The piano doesn't really, so it's pretty old, and the strings on it are really old, and it's one of those things, if you replace the strings on it at this stage, the whole thing will kind of just collapse in on itself. So it's not quite concert pitch, it's not quite in tune with itself, it's a bit of a character kind of thing. So again, if you wanted to use it, it's not impossible, you've just got to kind of work around what it wants to do rather than what you want to do. Again, kit lives here. We have acoustic treatment that's movable around the room in terms of baffling. And that is pretty much it for our studio, minus the fact that we also have a small isolation booth there, which you can record in from both rooms. You can record in this room from both studios as well, so it's kind of a really flexible space. And I think with that we can now take a look at the desk.